So for our closing entries, the directions that they give us, you'll notice, is we still have a partial worksheet. What column is missing from our partial worksheet? Trial balance, okay? That is important. You need to realize this because when you go to do some assignments later on down the road, you're going to have the whole entire worksheet, but you need to realize where do you get your information from. So if I'm going to look at closing my accounts, can you please stop? That's enough of moving his chair. If I'm closing my expenses, the balance on trial, in my trial balance, is going to be different than my balance that is going to be in my income summary account because of my adjustments. So it's really important for you to realize when we go through to do our closing entries, we get all of our numbers and our data from our worksheet, from our income statement and balance sheet columns. I can't just say income statement columns because my last closing entry that I'm doing is going to be my drawing. And drawing is a contra owner's equity account, so therefore it needs to go on our balance sheet because the purpose of a balance sheet is to prove that our accounting equation is in balance. Okay, so we know when we are going to be getting our numbers from here. The other thing that we know is I told you when we did adjusting entries that there are no source documents. There are no source documents for closing entries as well. So what we have to do is right here on line 6, you will notice it doesn't give us a spot to put any numbers in. We're going to put in a heading, and that heading is just going to say closing entries. When you put that heading on there, that tells the people looking at your books that, hey, I don't have to have any source documents. The next part that we're going to do is we're going to do our R for our closing entries, our R for read. Our closing entries are always recorded on the last day of the fiscal period, which is the same date that we do our adjusting entries. So I already have the month on this page. We know that when we do our adjusting and closing entries, we do a separate page in our journal for that. We don't put it below any other transactions. So the month will be on the top. We are using page 4, so I just need to put in the 31st. So my first closing entry is R for read in our READ acronym or revenue. Our revenue account is sales. Sales, you can see, has a balance, a credit balance of $5,511. The whole purpose of closing entries is to get them to zero. So if sales has a credit balance, I need to debit it. So I'm going to put sales here for $5,511 because we know that when we journalize transactions, debit needs to go first. What do we close it into? I wrote it on the board 3 times. Income summary. Income summary is a temporary account that we use just to put stuff into. Okay? And I credit income summary $5,511. That is your first closing entry. Now, my second closing entry that I have is my E in READ, which stands for expenses. Expenses have what for normal balance? Debit. So what do I need to do for each one of my expenses? Credit. So I cannot write advertising expense on line 9 of my journal right now, because I need to put my debit first. What am I debiting? Income summary. Do I know how much yet? No, I do not, because I need to list all of my credits. So I'm going to have below on line 10, I'm going to have my first expense account, which is going to be advertising expense. And advertising expense is going to be credited $821. Then I'm going to do insurance expense is going to be credited $300. Miscellaneous expense is going to be credited $347. And again, we are crediting them because we need to get them to a zero balance. I have supplies expense, which is going to be credited $713. So this is an example where I have multiple lines that I'm using in my journal. I have several credits, and I'm only going to have one debit. So I listed income summary first, and I said, I don't know how much it is yet because I need to go through and list each one of my expenses separately. It would be harder and more of a pain if I closed income summary and advertising expenses one transaction and then income summary and insurance expenses a separate one, because think of all the times that you would have to post an income summary. So that is why when we journalize this transaction, I'm going to list each expense separately, and then I'm going to affect income summary once. Okay? Again, where did I get these numbers from? Worksheet on which column? Income statement column. Okay? We don't have a trial balance, but you need to remember that because eventually you're going to have an example that will have a trial balance, and it won't work if you get that from there. So right now I have my 4 credits. I need to add up those 4 credits to get my one debit. Anyone super fast on their calculator today? 2181, Dylan. Ding, 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 ding. So that is my second closing entry. We always have 4 closing entries. What's the third letter in my acronym? I, which is income summary. This is where usually I get the glassy look and kids are like, I don't get what you're doing. Oh, no. Or they just nod, follow along right now, but then when they do it on their own, they screw it all up. Okay. The I in READ stands for income summary. What we need to understand in order to do this is we need to know what have we already done to income summary at this point. What did we put in income summary? Revenue and expenses. So the balance right now in income summary is what? The net income or net loss. So I look here at my worksheet right here. I can see on my worksheet I have a net income of $3,330. Do you see that right here? And it even says net income. So what has to happen to capital if this is a net income? It has to be credited $3,330. So when I look at my balance sheet column, oh, look, here's my net income, here's a credit. That's what I need to do to my owner's equity. What do I need to do to income summary then? Debit. And what would happen to that account then? It will have a zero balance. The whole purpose is we get one transaction into our capital account that shows us our profit or loss for our fiscal period. So at any given point, when I look at my ledger for capital, I can go back and see the last day of every fiscal period, and I can see quickly income or loss, income or loss, income or loss. Okay? So my third closing entry is where I'm closing income summary, is going to have, income summary is going to have a credit balance, so I need to debit it. But I actually need to credit income summary, not insurance expense. $3,330. And then I am going to credit Darlene Wong Capital $3,330. You have to understand what each letter does in the acronym. The last letter in our acronym is what? And that means we need to get drawing to zero. When I look at my worksheet, right here, Darlene Drawing is line 9 on my worksheet. Darlene Wong Drawing has a debit balance. So what do I have to do to drawing to get it to zero? I have to credit drawing. So what are we going to close drawing into? Capital. And this is where I stand up, jump up and down, and say, never close capital! Don't do it. I'm going to say 5 of you on the test are going to try to close capital. What do I mean by that? You're going to look at your worksheet, and you'll be like, oh, I know I have to do a whole bunch of stuff to capital, and you're going to take this 6,543 and you're going to try to do something with that number. That's wrong. Okay? We don't affect anything with this number right here for capital. I use the account, and the account capital is closed, has accounts closed into it. We close income summary and we close drawing into capital. So what I need to do right now is I'm going to debit Darlene Wong capital, and I'm going to credit Darlene Wong drawing. Those are your 4 closing entries. I keep saying 4 closing entries because how many dates do we have under closing entries? 4. I also have students that eventually when they give you all the blocks to write in, they write the date each line. There are 4 closing entry: revenue, expense, income summary, and drawing. Now I need to post. So I'm going to start at the very top. I'm going to post sales. Libby, do you have this done already? You have it posted? Okay. So I'm going to find my account sales. And please look right here, this line that all of you are skipping over. If you don't do this, Aplia marks it wrong and I say you didn't read the directions. Note, type a 0 in both the debit and credit balance column to indicate a 0 balance. You have to do that. If not, Apple will say, wrong, because guess what? I said it out loud, and there's directions there. So, line 7, I'm posting. The date is the 31st. Post reference is 4 because I'm getting it from page 4 of my journal. Sales is being debited $5,511. It had a credit balance, so therefore its balance is 0. So I have to put a 0 in both columns, just like that. If you don't, Aplia will mark it wrong. The last step that I do is I take 410 and put it back up top. I'm going to do the same thing to income summary. This is the first transaction on line 8 of my journal. I have to put in July. Today is the 31st, post reference 4. And I'm crediting income summary $5,511. It previously had a 0 balance, so it now has a credit balance of $5,511. I put account number 310 back up top. My next transaction I journalize is income summary again, but now I'm debiting it, $2,181. Its new balance now is not debit $2,181. I need to subtract $5,511 from $2,181, which should be our net income, which should be $3,330. Account number 310 goes back up top. What's that? I said the wrong number, but I typed the right number? Okay, sorry. The number that's on the screen is the right one, not what I said out loud, I guess. I had a bunch of people turn around. I'm like, I thought I did the right number. $3,330. That should be your balance of the income summary. Then I'm going to go ahead and do advertising expense. Now, the whole point of closing entries is revenue, expenses, and drawing should have a 0 balance. So if I credit advertising expense 821, It is 0, and I put 510 back up top. Do the same thing for insurance expense. The date is the 31st. Post reference 4. Credit it for 300. $520. Back up on there to show that I posted. Do the same thing for miscellaneous expense. I have posted all of my revenue accounts. All right, I have a treat for the person that can answer this question correctly. Ready? Want to make sure I got everyone's attention. I've talked about the account income summary, and I told you that it's a temporary account. Who can give me the account classification for income summary? I haven't said it, but you can figure it out based on what we've done. Owner's equity, ding, ding, ding. Why? How did you figure it out? We are closing into owner's equity accounts. The other way that you know it's an owner's equity account is what is its account number? Look at income summary. What's the account number? 330. We know assets start with 1, liabilities are 2, owner's equity is 3. Would you agree? Okay, so we know that income summary is a temporary owner's equity account. We use it just to close items into, and I really like how Dylan said that everything that we're closing into is an owner's equity account as well. That was a very great leap of seeing that what we're closing into. Okay, so we know that income summary is an owner's equity account because of the account number 330. So I am to the point where I'm closing income summary right now, and the date is the 31st. Post reference is 4, and I need to debit it $330. Account number 330 there, and then I'm going to need to go to capital. And capital is being affected as a credit. And you have a previous balance in capital of $6,543, and I need to add $3,330. So that's going to give me a credit balance of $9,873. $310 goes back up on top. Now, this is another one where I'm affecting capital right away again because I need to close drawing. And drawing has a debit balance, so it's going to decrease my owner's equity. So I need to now subtract $2,100. So I have, after all of my closing entries, I have capital is being, has a credit balance of $8,773. My last account that I need to close is my drawing account. Now, one of the things I find a little difficult with Applia right now is that I can't very easily see all of my ledgers open at once, okay? Which is nice because you don't have to scroll down a ginormously long web page. But if I could open up all of my ledgers for you, everything after capital would have what for a balance? 0. Because capital is account number 310. 320 is drawing, and we've already closed drawing. 330 is income summary. We've closed that. Then we go to 410, which is sales. Sales should have a 0 balance. Then I go to my expenses, which is 5, 10 through however many expenses I have. Those should have a 0 balance. So if I had a piece of paper that had all of my ledgers laid out that I could easily see them all on, after I'm done with my closing entries here, everything after capital should be 0. If they had a balance, that would be your clue that you had done something incorrect. Okay, so this is the hardest part for Chapter 8. Section 8.3 that we're doing tomorrow is going to be our last permanent financial statement that we have to create for the end of fiscal period work, and then we have learned a whole entire accounting cycle of journalizing transactions, our end of our fiscal period work. Okay? I see many of you are already working on your own. Please make sure that you look and try to figure out how to do their closing entries using the acronym of READ, Revenue, Expenses, Income Summary, and Drawing.